Welcome to the Future Pulse podcast, where we dive into the world of innovation and technology. My name is Melica, and I'm the founder and CEO of SkillTorch, which is a tech recruitment company specializing and working with AI data center companies and AI infrastructure. Today, I have with me Kevin Nicholas, who is the Chief Revenue and Marketing Officer at CSCS. Great to have you on here.
Hey, Malika. Great to be here. Thanks for having me on your show.
Likewise. Well, Kevin, if for anyone that doesn't know you, tell us a bit more about your background, what got you into this company in the first place.
Yeah, no, it's a great lead-off question and something I'm always eager to share. So I've been in the technology world for at least the last 30 years. And most recently, I've started my own consulting business, but part of that consulting business for CMO, CR, really fractional services, really focuses on growth. And started working with CSCS maybe about 2 years ago plus, and such a great connection with the people here, we decided that I'd join full time as a CRO. So I've been doing that for the past year plus. But even prior to that, some of my background includes executive roles at SAP, global
Mhm.
roles, also Sage Software out of the UK. I was part of that enterprise division for the ERP side and ran some of the sales, marketing, and product. And then initially in my career, I was in telecom and slowly transitioned into software. So AT&T and T and some big companies. So it was great to have some big company experience and transition into some mid-sized and smaller companies in order to help with the growth engine and some of the interesting things that you can do with smaller companies and technology, including liquidation of events and growth events.
Very cool. So you've actually worked across so many different types of industries. So this is pretty different for you now.
Yeah, well, this seems like an evolution, right? Being in software for a long time, the ERP side, and then of course dabbling a little bit in the supply chain side. On the supply chain side, it's really fascinating. I almost call this the third coming. The first wave was the SAPs, the Oracles, and the ERPs that tried to do everything, and I was part of that world, right? So I do get that some of that ambition. However, they didn't do all the things needed, and in the supply chain in particular, then you had the Manhattans and the Blue Yonders come in to fill those gaps. Well, the third wave now was really AI. And that's what we believe
Mm.
what we're leading at CSCS because we are an agentic AI powered software platform for supply chain, really PO to delivery. And the optimization, and really there's three pieces to it. I'll be brief. There's integration of all these systems and data, which is really important, which is really hard to do. And then
Yeah.
that creates that visibility. And then the optimization piece of the agentic AI on top of it is really important and really disruptor right now, as we all know, in a good way. And specifically, we focus on the mid market companies, those companies that really have been left behind. But we also can certainly provide, and we have some enterprise customers as well.
Right. Great stuff. So yeah, as you mentioned, the range of customers. So obviously you're working across supply chain, but I believe you guys are also working on manufacturing and distribution and potentially healthcare as well.
Yeah.
So where are you actually seeing AI and software being used today and not just sort of talked about?
So I love that question as well because it's all about the use cases that customers need. And what we're
Yeah.
finding is that customers are looking at AI with a lot of optimism, but some skepticism just because they're trying to figure it out. Right. But there are very
Mm.
specific use cases that AI is bringing into supply chain. And you're right. We focus across a lot of industries. Anywhere you need to move product, we can help. But specifically, what we're really seeing in some of these industries are things like the cold chain side of the business, like large grocery stores and distributors, right, where there is real things data that needs to be collected and optimized, like temperature control when you are moving product. I believe that one of the latest estimates is that over 20% of all perishable goods spoil during transit, right? That's a big cost for food companies. So some of the use cases, to be brief, is how do you have visibility across, say, the transportation network for a distributor of groceries and perishable goods, and specifically tracking that data, such as refrigeration data on the reefer itself in the trailer, and then applying AI in order to do some predictions about whether or not that refrigeration unit, again called the reefer, is going to go down or not. And
Mm.
that's one use case, right? Where we can see bounces in the temperature, first of all, for compliance. But secondly, if that reefer goes down, you can lose $200,000 worth of produce on that trailer. And the AI actually does some predictions on that before that can even happen. That's one use case. And in a cold chain that we're seeing a lot of interest for.
Great. So, from a business point of view, so what sort of problems are companies in general within supply chain are trying to solve with AI right now across that, and what's sort of pushing them to adopt it?
Yeah, yeah. So building on that one use case I just mentioned, there's so many of them,
Mm.
right? But essentially, it's converting, and when we like to say this, right? Converting
Yeah.
your supply chain from a cost center to a profit center. And how do you do that? Well, you do that by being able to increase revenues and lower your costs. And but one use case about saving inventory is a clear example of lowering costs. But we also have modules in the platform that's AI, all AI driven for things like demand planning, like when we are seeing when we have all of this data from a customer in terms of inventory movement to stores and the inventory tracking, we could begin to, or we are making AI is agentic AI is making predictions that people can use to plan for proper inventory control, to make sure there's no stockouts, to make sure that the stores and retailers would be another customer of ours that we have in Target, that retailers would have enough of the inventory on hand for seasonality and for
Mm.
peaks and drops in demand. And so that's part of not being stocked out and making sure you have enough inventory to be able to match that demand for revenue, right? So we increase revenues, we lower costs, and essentially it turns into a profit center versus a traditional cost center that we're all used to in the supply chain as typically being a cost versus an efficient part of the business.
Right. I mean, AI has changed a lot. I mean, I feel like in even the last couple of months, it's changed. I'm trying to even figure out, like, obviously, the latest topic is about AI infrastructure, AI in manufacturing and supply chain. But sort of, have you noticed a change in how businesses approach AI compared to even a year or even two ago? And would you say people are more impatient? Would you say they're more confident or more cautious? I mean, in my point of view, I feel like they're more cautious, but what do you think?
Yeah, there's still this level of skepticism about what AI can actually do.
Mm.
But when you zero in on pain points like we're talking about with customers, they can do one of really three things. And when it comes right down to it, excuse me, they can either live with the pain, which they're getting more and more pressure to do something about it, such as asset tracking, such as route optimization to control fuel costs. This is a big use case as well. Or they can deploy a lot of custom engineering to try to retrofit their current platforms to try to make it better. And that may or may not include AI. Or they can take an AI proven platform like we have and show use cases and success with existing customers, right? And so that's the trajectory I think that people are beginning to look at is, can I live with my pain? If I can't, then we're getting pressure from the executive levels and the CEOs of these companies to actually look at AI, because that's the biggest change now. I think that a lot of these operators, the VP of logistics, the GM in charge of the warehouse, and so on and so forth, and others are getting pressure from the CEO and the CFO saying how we're going to use AI because of all the press about it. And now they have to figure it out. And so we're here to help them figure it out because, like this podcast, this helps with thought leadership and understanding. And then we do a lot of that and on an individual customer basis as well.
And then where do you see businesses still struggle the most? Is it the data, would you say? Would you say it's the integration? Would you say it's cost, trust, or something else entirely?
Yeah, the biggest the biggest pain that we see with companies, it's pretty fundamental, and it's still an AI connection, is the integration of these systems. Either at a mid-market level, a lot of them don't have systems or they have very fragmented system. Even at an enterprise
Mm.
level, you have an ERP, you have a supply chain system, potentially you have order systems, there's all these systems that don't talk to each other, right? While integration in itself is not necessarily a unique value proposition. It's a necessary part of the platform that we do very well. We have over 1,000 built connectors for these integrations. But then creating that visibility plane and the control tower that is still there as well with some of these platforms. However, it doesn't bring all the data together. And so once you have all the data, all the systems and workflows, and then you can apply the agentic AI on it, that's the icing on the cake, right? And so that, if I can go back for a second, it's really starts with just making everything talk together. And then
Yeah.
that enables the AI to work efficiently. What we have seen is there are some niche players out there that have AI, but it's just focused on this piece of the supply chain. That's great. However, you really need to focus on the full supply chain with an AI agentic layer, like kind of what we do have in order to make it most efficient. It does start with integration, the tracking of things like IoT devices and assets in the field, in the supply chain,
Mm.
to bring it all back together to apply the agentic AI.
Right. They're really insightful there. Um, CSCS has actually built their own AI and source code for supply chain, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two flavors of AI out there right now.
Mhm.
There's homegrown AI, or I should say proprietary AI for very specific applications, right? And
Yeah.
that's the really cool stuff in innovation right now. We're doing that on supply chain. So we spent about 3 years developing this platform. And interesting, very quickly, use case of why we did this is that when we were working with customers from some of our consulting business, we were seeing gaps in their or pain points in for their supply chain over and over and over again. And so then
Yeah.
what do you do when you have lots of gaps and it's recurring? Well, you create a product, right, to fit those gaps. You don't have to keep doing custom engineering. And that's what we did, right? So over 3 years, a lot of investment, we developed this AI powered agentic AI supply chain. So the other piece of AI development is usually based upon things like existing platforms like ChatGPT. One thing that I have seen, and it's pretty apparent in the market now, is general AI. Right, it can't really solve very specific applications that AI specific applications can't solve, like in supply chain. Another
Okay.
example is pharmaceuticals, drug development. Companies that develop their user interface around ChatGPT type of applications really can't go deep enough. But there is a trend for very specific applications like supply chain, pharmaceuticals, that we're really seeing really cool innovation and customer adoption for.
Got you. All right. I mean, do you know why CSCS decided to build their sort of own source code for supply chain?
I'm sorry.
Like, why did they decide to build it rather than sort of buy it?
Well, it was because it wasn't out there, right? I mean, like I was saying,
Mm.
these applications, these specific AI platforms for specific applications just really didn't exist a couple years ago, right? And
Right.
now this is where the big focus on AI is in very specific applications, supply chain, pharmaceuticals, so on and so forth. AI started with general AI like ChatGPT and others, right? And now it's
Yeah.
evolving for very specific applications. And again, I'll repeat that ChatGPT and all those general AI, large language models, and so on and so forth, they're not trained for specific applications.
No, they're not.
Right, and that's where we are really focused, and that's where other application companies, again, pharmaceuticals, another good example, are focused, and that's why they're so much better. Now, that's why we developed it is because it needs to be specific on an application, and also we saw all these pain points with customers that needed to be fixed and solved.
Yeah. What's one thing about applying AI in complex real world environments like supply chain that sort of people outside the space tend to underestimate, would you say?
The key thing is the learning of the model, right? And that
Mm.
includes lots of data sets that come in from a real world situation, but also the technology itself and the AI itself, its ability to adapt and to learn, and with the algorithms that are in place for the specific platform like ours, where it's very nimble and it's very efficient and it's very optimal in terms of going fast. The
Yeah.
best thing about the AI platforms such as ours in the supply chain is when you start seeing some patterns, right? Then it capitalizes on it. Now, look, I mean, there can be a situation where a very smart person can try to do optimization on a 2000 route table application or set. That might take them 2 weeks to do, right? And then by that
Yeah.
time, it's it's already you can't. It's old data. Meanwhile, the AI can do all that in a very efficient way, like in 2 minutes versus 2 weeks. And so, what we try to say is we're not replacing people in the supply chain. We're enabling their decision making. And that's an example of a route optimization of things that it can learn very quickly and apply the optimization very quickly and adjust to it. Another good example on route optimization is not only making sure no trailers are empty and maximizing the lowest fuel consumption, so to speak, but also taking consideration weather and other events that you wouldn't think about. If there's a blizzard coming through the Midwest in December, well, the AI will make predictions on that well in advance and alert and then update routes in order to make sure that none of those trucks get stranded, as an example.
Right. Okay. Well, last but not least, I do ask all my guests this very final question. What do you think businesses and us should be really focusing in the next 1 to 2 years when it comes to AI and software adoption?
Yeah, well, specifically in the supply chain, I think businesses are grappling with this, especially enterprises are grappling with this notion
Yeah.
of, wow, I already spent a lot on my supply chain and it's not evolving as far as the technologies, as far as the platform and the software. It's not evolving. My current systems and platforms are not evolving to the pace I need them to evolve. And that again goes back to what I had mentioned. That means you got to live with the pain, or you got to do some custom development, or you have to make some changes. What we've done is, since the integration of our platform is more seamless, we've eliminated this rip and replace type of mentality where AI is an evolution and you don't have to just rip out your current platforms. If you're an enterprise, you can overlay an AI platform like ours in order to bring it to the next level. Right. And so I think that is the big understanding for some of these enterprises in particular moving forward the next year to 3 years is, do I live with my pain and then I continue to have higher costs and lower profits and revenues, or do I do something about it but I don't want to rip and replace? That's a big
Mm.
deal right now for enterprises, and for mid markets, we see a similar thing, but on a smaller scale, where there's a lot of manual and there's a lot of disparate systems that you can also bring together. So it's
Yeah.
not. I don't call it a revolution. I call it an evolution in that regard, and that's the biggest thing businesses are trying to understand right now.
Yeah, of course. Anyway, absolute pleasure to have you on here, Kevin. Thank you so much for all your insight.
My pleasure. Glad to be here, and thank you for having me.
Thank you.